and YouTube, Twitter. Does Twitter still exist for now? And Facebook. Actually, Twitter and Facebook both announced major layoffs. Twitter already did theirs. Facebook just announced the layoff of 11,000 people, I think. Definitely
Hmm.
topical for what we're going to be talking about today, but don't want to spoil where we're going. But you are in for a treat today because we are here with Bryan Gorman. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's water cooler. I'm sorry my voice is sort of in and out today, so I'm unfortunately gonna have to let my guests do some of the talking. So
Ah,
no pressure, Bryan. Um,
yeah, not at
Bryan,
all.
Bryan has worked in the human resource industry for 22 years. He's occupied a variety of sales and sales leadership roles where his job is to basically get in the head of people, understand their pain points, and what you in HR need. Is that an accurate characterization, Bryan?
That is, David. Yes, absolutely. And thank you for having me on. I think it's a treat to be on your show. I know you've been on my podcast a couple times, and enjoyed having you on, and have a great deal of respect for you, and very much looking forward to our conversation today.
Thank you, Bryan. Me too.
Mhm.
I thought you'd be the perfect guest to specifically talk about this topic. I knew you'd be a perfect guest, but but regarding the topic, this seems like the perfect topic to discuss with you when we talk about these post-pandemic trends in HR. Um,
Sure.
Namely because of how long you've been in the industry and because your finger is on the pulse of industry, just by nature of what you do.
Right.
Bryan now is the director of sales and marketing at TruPay Corporation in Mishawaka, Indiana. I said it right?
Got that right.
Okay,
Yes, that's
cool.
right.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
thank you
you
so much for
passed the
doing that.
test.
Yes, all right. Well,
Yeah,
as you know, I have a test for you, right?
sure.
So this is where we start with the 6 and 60. If you're at home, you could play along as well. If you're live streaming this or watching the replay, go ahead and answer these questions as well. All right, Bryan, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. What is one thing that you would like to see stick around after this pandemic?
I think a lot of the virtual things that we're still doing, as far as like meetings, for example, I know from a sales perspective, doing things like this, and then also doing things like online demos are very helpful as well. So I think being able to continue to do online work in some capacity is something that I think should stay around.
Great. When you're feeling overwhelmed or burned out, what do you do to reset and recharge?
Workout, workout, lift weights, boot camp classes, spin classes. That's it. That's my
All right.
go-to.
So speaking of working out, I'm gonna out you as a little league like world champion, not quite champion,
Mm,
but almost. Right? You made it to the championship game in the U.S. Um, and only Irvine, California beat you, which is why you're not
correct.
playing in the majors today. What is one lesson that you learned from that experience?
Oh man, I think that's a great question, but I think perseverance, tenacity. Maybe I'll give you two. I think just being able to. You don't really understand when you're 12. Going through that in that process, you kind of looking back on it, you're like, wow, we had just a great group of guys and worked hard and persevered through an entire summer. And again, this was back before. I think I mentioned in our questions before. Um, as far as ESPN and Sports Center it was barely a thing at that point, but we were able to be on there as kids, and I think I still have it on VHS, the recording of all of that. So if VHS even is still around in some capacity, I'm not even sure I can play it back, right? I think it's how do I even get to be able to play it back anymore? But I think that's those are the two lessons: being able to now relate that back to being in my role and just sports in general, just that competitiveness, that tenacity, that being able to just continue to move forward in what you're doing.
Wow, I think that those are traits that are so important for everyone now, and certainly have always been extremely important in sales. I could definitely see that. Give us one
Hmm.
notable trait of your favorite boss of all time.
Oh, favorite boss of all time. Oh, I think the ability to listen. I think, and I was going to talk a little bit about that today too. But I think that's just being able to listen and kind of just be in the trenches with you. I think that was very important. Looking back on who that person was, just you felt like they were a partner in what you were doing, and less of a boss, but more like, hey, I'm going to come alongside you. We're in this together, and we're going to work together to have the outcome we both desire. But I think it's just being, hey, I'm a partner with you, and I am someone that's going to be on your team, on your side, but lived it out. Just didn't talk it, but lived it out.
It's that collaborative nature
Hmm.
with the give and take. I love it. Best piece of advice or wisdom you've ever been given.
Um, I think it would be just stay the course. I think a lot of times we get kind of reactive to things. I think being proactive in a lot of ways is very helpful, and maybe being able to look at situations and just see how you can be proactive instead of being reactive. I think those are just from an advice standpoint. Those are um, that's something I've always kind of taken with me.
And in 5 words or less, what is the meaning of life? I,
Man, I
I,
didn't get these ahead of
hey,
time,
I'm here to
David.
challenge
Man.
you. Is this
Um, oh, it's I think it honestly I think it's to serve others. I think
right?
it's just to be and whatever you're doing, whether it's a sales and marketing role, whether it's I have a daughter who's a nurse. I think it's just serving others in whatever capacity that you're doing, putting others first. I think is really what the meaning is, and putting yourself maybe second, third, as opposed to leading with yourself, put others first.
Well said. You completely flunked the test of doing all of that in 60
Oh,
seconds,
well,
but
you said I would
I
because
think I think
everyone else has as well.
it's true. But I think that those answers were well worth it. Really,
Good.
really well thought out. I love it. Um, so I guess we need to start by understanding more about you. Could you tell us your
Yeah.
origin story? Like, how did you get here with TruPay? How did you get sort of
Yeah.
swept up in the HR ecosystem? How did that all happen for you? How do you go from
Yeah.
Little
So,
League Baseball to TruPay?
well, my first role out of school was more of a sports role. So I took a job at the College Football Hall of Fame that used to be in South Bend, Indiana,
Mm.
which is where we're located, right outside of South Bend. But we took a marketing role there, and that was something that I really enjoyed. It was a role that was you're meeting, a lot of famous sports people that would come visit out of the blue, and was really cool and just a really awesome opportunity. But at that point in our lives, it was just wanting to get into more of a sales role. So I actually applied to an HR payroll company, not knowing really what it was,
Mm.
um, in an ad in the paper. I mean, who still remember? I get your jobs, look for your the classifieds, right? So I applied for a job, went on a vacation, came back, had a voicemail to respond to, hey, we got your resume, would love to have a conversation with you. And long story short, ended up working with them for several years. Part of our division was sold off to another payroll HR company. Ended up connecting with a good friend, a mentor of mine that used to work at TruPay, and we connected, and they had a sales role open there. And I worked at TruPay from 2008 to 2016, where I actually left TruPay and went and took a management role that I wanted to be in at the time, and left and spent 5 years at a company over in Elkhart, Indiana. and left there when the company had some issues. And I ended up back here as I stayed in touch with one of the owners of TruPay, and he's like, "Hey, we'd love to have you back," and ended up coming back and right after the pandemic. So right about 20,
Part you
summer
were
of
riding that
2021.
great
So been back.
resignation wave. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. It wasn't more, but yeah, I would have to say that was the case. Yeah, it was more of you could. We were going back into the office, kind of the shift of being from for me anyway. It was more of a shift back into the office. So it was something that I took advantage of and knew the people really well. I wanted just to be back in the back at that organization. So that's how I ended up back here.
Great. So are you working in the office now? Is that
You know what? That's a great question. It's I'd say 80% back in the office.
mm,
We're a smaller group. We're about 50 employees, but we do have remote employees. But I think it's more of I'm just one that likes the office better.
yeah.
Now I know I would say though that like I mentioned earlier, there are some parts of like in the sales process where something like an online demo or jumping online to go over a proposal or something like that works extremely well. That you can do from anywhere, right? But I think it's we're just kind of seeing, well, hey, if you want to be at home, great. If you want to be in the office, that's great too. But we see both, and for me personally, it's more being back in the office.
Okay. So we've been dancing around things like the great resignation and
Yeah,
flexible work. I assume these are some of the trends you're seeing, but what are the main trends you're seeing as you interact with HR professionals from all over Indiana, right? At least.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
what are some of the trends that you're seeing right now? Post pandemic and even more specifically now, because it seems like things are changing once a quarter. It seems like we're talking about something brand
Oh,
new.
no, you're absolutely right, and I think you're an expert in this field too. But I think burnout. I think it's something that we're still seeing, and I think that it's something that we are as a industry, and I think just as an economy trying to figure it out because I think a lot of people are burned out. And I even from my own perspective, I think in a lot of ways you're constantly on the go. And I think with the pandemic, with these tools and being online and and working from home, I think that you know I can see why people are burned out because you're just you kind of work through your lunch. You kind of just run and grab lunch and bring it back, and you work till 6:30, 7 o'clock at night thinking because I've been in my office at home, so might as well just keep working, right? So I think it's just hard to, and I've seen HR directors talk about this where they see employees just, hey, take time for yourself, put yourself first. And sometimes it's okay to do that. But I think it comes back to communication. I think it comes back to, some people think it's not okay to do that. Are they watching me? Are they monitoring what I'm doing? Is upper management looking at how much time I'm spending logged into the computer? And I think that it's got to be communicated from the top that hey, it's okay, go for a walk or take it out of yourself and it's okay. And I think that's a huge part of that too. I think it can really help with the burnout if management is communicating that well and kind of standing behind their employees and saying, hey, do that.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, and they need to be believed, right? I don't know how
Right.
if you've been seeing the same thing, but as I work a lot with HR professionals, as you do, um, a lot of them are very much on board with the importance of the mental health and flexibility of their employees and preventing
Hmm.
burnout for their employees, but they abuse themselves and they're not protecting themselves from burnout. Have you seen this at all through your HR clients and
Oh,
other leaders?
yeah, no, absolutely. I would 100% agree with you. And it can be as simple as doing something like, and I'm speaking for what we kind of did here at TruPay. What we've done, we had like an Olympics, and we're lucky enough to have a break room where we have a ping pong table and a dartboard and a foosball table, and we're encouraged to use that throughout the day and stuff. But we actually took a time and all of us got together and did like an Olympic a triathlon where we did ping pong, and then you can kind of see um, a bracket where people were in the
Huh.
process, and who you're going to play next, and it just got to be really fun, and it kind of really helped us as a group kind of avoid that burnout a little bit and kind of take a break. And just do that. So things like that HR can encourage. Now, our HR group, that was their idea, and it was a fantastic um, thing that we did here at TruPay, and just it brought as camaraderie, time with your colleagues, and just people were talking smack. It was just a fun time
Yeah.
as a group. And I think that you're right, and everybody took advantage of that. Management, all of us took the time to do that. So I think that yeah, I've seen to your point, David. I think that you're right. I think it's management's not really taking the time to do that, and they should as well. Um,
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
agree.
I think it would send a very different message if they set that up and management wasn't there, right?
Hmm.
That would have been a
Yeah.
totally different story. Um,
Hmm.
but oftentimes I see that dynamic, which is why we see middle management burning out more than anybody, and they don't really have the
Hmm.
resources given to them that we invest in other people. Um,
Right.
so, but here's another question. So you said that people are working as remote as they feel like really in your organization, right? You want to
Yeah.
feel work from home
Right.
if you want to. So when something like this is happening, you have this Olympic challenge. Um,
Right.
what about the people that are at home?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's We encourage those that were local to come in, and I think that's part of a little bit of a challenge where you weren't able to really get the people that lived in like Texas, for example, to come in and fly them in to play ping pong and then fly them out. It's hard. That's something we didn't do. But I think to your point, I think it's we were still able to get them to do some things with the group. But if they weren't able to be on site, it'd be hard to participate in something like that. But that's a great question. But they were acknowledged as well, and were able to still at least participate in different things. And we've done things like your happy hours and taking time to do like different games at the end of a week, jumping online and just doing things like that, which brings all of us together.
Yeah,
And I think organizations that do that, you're going to boost morale. I think at the end of the day, you're just going to do that, which I think all of us really really need. It's
yeah,
just a chance to all collaborate, get together, and have our moods and our spirits kind of brought up as well.
yeah. So it's interesting because the other day I was speaking with somebody who was flown across the country for a company retreat. So they flew
Hmm.
this individual out and they had a 3 day retreat and they had all sorts of activities and games and learning and development and team building. And he was so upset. Turns out the guy is a major introvert. And even more than that,
Hmm.
like so many of us, when the pandemic happened and everybody went home and really rethought the role that work plays in their life, he was very clear that work is where he makes his paycheck and he'll do really
Hmm.
good work and invest the time into
Hmm.
that work. But he doesn't want this force fed culture, right? And so,
Hmm.
like, are I'm seeing a lot of this culture that now, because people are at home, it's sort of force fed to us because we know how important culture is. But then
Hmm.
there's like this shift where before we weren't giving enough culture, and now people are like, let me just do the work, and you're pulling them in, right? And so
That's a good point.
there's
Yeah,
sort of this flip flop. Have you found
almost too much culture, right?
right? Has have you or does TruePay sort of offer solutions in ways of how to connect with those people who are working from home? Help your clients sort of connect with them a little bit better without them needing to come into the office or to build the team in
Oh,
other ways.
sure. Yeah, so we offer a full HCM platform where we're able to, manage payroll, HR, time and attendance solutions throughout a single login platform. But to your point about it's employee engagement, right? So how can an employee be engaged and through our solution, they are able to look at things that have access to a company hub where they can see what's going on in the organization. If they have certain events that are coming up, they can see what's coming up. They can sign up for those types of things immediately through the system. They can do things like sign up for benefits and had that conversation with their spouse, significant other about which benefit plan they should do that. And they can do it in the comfort of their home, right? They don't have to go in, or they could really be anywhere and have those conversations that are extremely important, and you have those at your convenience, right? And you can do that whenever you'd like to, and or even using an app to do those kinds of things as well. So yeah, I think it's hugely important to put the technology in the employee's hands. It is an employee-centric world right now, and I think that the better the employee experience, I think the better off the organization is going to be as well. I think it's critically important to be able to have those solutions that make a difference, and I believe that we have a very good solution, and not only that, but I think it's the service behind it. I think that's the biggest advantage that I think that we have as an organization is the ability to really service the customer. Because if you're going to compete with the big boys out there, and we all know who they are, it's the ability to create a customer experience that's second to none, and we certainly do that, here at TruPay. I think that's the biggest advantage. That's where the rubber meets the road. If I'm up against a deadline, I've got to do payroll, I've got to get HR a project completed, I've got to get things right, and I need someone that I can get a hold of, and I can get a hold of quickly, and they know what they're talking about. And at the end of the day, that's what we do extremely well.
Yeah, the more support you have, the less likely you are to
Mhm.
be burned out. So that's
Oh,
not only
absolutely.
true with your coworkers and supervisors, it's also true with all of those supporting partners. So
Oh, yeah.
that's more important than ever.
Well, and I think too, we talked about other trends as well, but I think the quiet quitting topic that we've talked about, I think is huge too. I think that that goes back to the employee experience and how they're being treated, and again back to management and how management's doing. And this could be this could be a subject for another podcast too. But just
Right.
some of the things that management is doing, and how are they able to leader be a leader, but be a consistent leader and be a leader that communicates well. I think the communication part is so critical. And even preparing for this, I think you're reading articles where it's a common theme. It's
Mhm.
something that a lot of organizations are struggling with, but I think it's hard to do that when you're kind of disjointed and you have remote employees, and you're to your point too earlier, David, about there's too much culture. Well, I'm jumping on a morning huddle, and I'm jumping on an afternoon huddle, and then I'm trying to stay connected, but at the same time, that's a challenge as well. I think it just comes down to and boils down to communication. It really
Right.
does.
Yeah, and flexibility, I think, is part of that communication.
Hmm.
Like you started off, I think in the 6 and 60 talking about that collaborative sort of having a boss that listens and that
Hmm.
collaborates with you. I think it needs to go both ways because you need to be able to read your people and know who needs more of the culture, needs more of the communication, and who needs less, who's drowning in it because you're having 14 meetings a day and they've got so much work to do. And even though you think that those meetings are great for building teamwork and culture, they might be burning people
Hmm.
the hell out, right? So
Right,
it's
right.
really knowing who needs what because it is going to be different for everybody. It's an
Everybody.
ongoing joke that the answer to any question you ask HR is it depends. And in IO psychology, it's the same. In any social science, any place where you're working with people, it depends because you are never
Right,
going to have an absolute truth. And you need to be
right,
true to the individual. We need to talk about equity, not equality, in the sense that everybody does not need the same thing. you need to figure out what each individual needs.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I think it's even you can boil it down to like even on the one-on-one meetings that managers have with their employees and just asking how they're adding it to your questions, like how are you doing this week and what do you need from me this week, and how are you feeling from a cultural standpoint, and just maybe a version of that kind of a question. What do you need from me?
Right.
But then me back to that service element. How can I help you this week, and how what are you struggling with, and just maybe making it more on the, again, I'm coming from a sales perspective where, hey, it's very numbers driven, right? So that's what sales is. But I think that, also just taking a step back and saying, what are you, how are you doing personally? What's your personal life like? What are you struggling with? And again, where can I pick up the slack for you? Where can I, as a manager, be able to help you? And again, just that alone, I think, can go a long way in helping to develop a relationship with your direct reports, and just making it more of a, that with the culture, the quiet quitting part, you don't have to worry about that as much, and it just leads more to more engagement on the employee side, I think.
Right. Right. So what are you seeing now? So in terms of the needs of these HR professionals, that on one hand, we went through the Great Resignation, which seems to have
Hmm.
peaked around March 2022, with the
Hmm.
highest number of quits we've ever seen since they've been tracked by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the highest number of job openings since they've been tracked by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That's March, only a few months ago, really,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But now you turn around and 11,000 people are being laid off from Meta. Like, brand new breaking story. 11,000 people. Twitter just laid off half its people. And so
Hmm.
you've got these layoffs that are really hitting hard now. Um so what is it? Is it the employer employees market? Like, what is happening here? Are you seeing people adding to their payroll, or are you seeing them subtracting from their payroll? What is happening right now?
I think back to your earlier question or point, it depends, right? I think it just depends on the organization. I've seen a lot of both. I've seen, and we're up here in Northern Indiana. We're heavy manufacturing where we're located. A lot of this kind of RV capital of the world,
Mhm.
and I think you're kind of seeing a little bit of both. I think you're seeing the industry where there are a lot of people being hired, and then I think you see a lot of people that might be taking time off as well, just because sales are slower. So it just really just depends, and the inflation piece as well is certainly out there for a lot of us. And I think that it's a very uncertain time. Um, I think that we just kind of see really just depends on the health of the organization, what they're doing. I know us personally speaking here at TruPay, we were in a higher mode, and now we're more of a looking to just evaluate what's going on. And I think in a lot of ways we've hired those people, and now we're kind of in a stand pat, and let's kind of charge the mountain from here. But I think that I've seen um, a lot of my contacts and people in the HR world are I've seen a lot of both. To answer your question, there's a little bit of both.
Yeah. Yeah, the talk about uncertainty. It's an interesting market to be in right now with a lot of different needs. But one of the things that I find really interesting is that quiet quitting. Who was it? Greeley, this Greeley guy who posts his TikTok coining the phrase quiet quitting. And in
Okay.
March of this year, the same time that the Great Resignation peaks, we start talking about recession, we start with the layoffs, and then quiet quitting becomes so dominant. We know through historical research in burnout that there's plenty of reactions to burnout. Some are to leave the job, to leave the industry, sure,
Hmm.
but another way people react to burnout is quiet quitting, or what in the late 80s was coined by Pines and Aronson as dead wood, right? These dead wood employees were the ones that would do the
Hmm.
bare minimum. They would skate by. And so dead wood wasn't a great term. It was an academic sort of shot at a term, and then we got a TikToker
Hmm.
trying to term it. I don't like any of the terminology, but it is this sort of
Hmm.
disengagement where people are there, but they're really not putting in any of the extras. Um, have you seen this problem arising with your clients, and has TruPay helped them with any solutions, or have you heard what kind of solutions people have for this disengagement problem?
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't seen a whole lot of it. It's more like hearing about it,
Yeah.
seeing it on TikTok, or you see it in a lot of HR articles. I kind of scan in the mornings with the HR SHRM website or just different HR websites, and it seems to be an overall arching theme out there. But I think I haven't heard a lot of people talking about it. I think um, from a solution perspective, I think it's just kind of, we do offer solutions where we can go in and do some HR, deep dives with the people in the organization and talk about their HR solutions and what's working and what's not working, being able to provide some best practices and consulting around that. But I think to answer your question, I haven't seen a whole lot of it. Maybe here in where I'm located in northern Indiana, anyway, I haven't seen a whole lot of that. But I know that from a national perspective, it is a big trend out there right now. And again, going back to the employee engagement piece, it's just engaging your employees and making them feel valued, and in a lot of ways will help, I think, to alleviate a lot of that quiet quitting, dead wood, so to speak, part of what's going on. So
Yeah.
I think that's something that we're dealing with as a country too right now.
Yeah. I would say
Hmm.
the only thing more expensive than turnover is turnover intention, right? It's when
Hmm.
somebody wants to turn over, they want to quit, but they won't for whatever reason. Oftentimes you'll find this in high paying, sometimes high status positions where it's like the golden handcuff, right? They work so hard to make
Right.
their way up the rung. So I do a lot of work with law firms, and you see in smaller law firms where, I mean, they were trendsetters when it came to burnout. Lawyers have been
Right.
burning out forever, right? But in smaller law firms, you see people exiting the law firm when they burn out, right? Or even exiting the practice of law. I
Hmm.
can't even tell you how many, just in my personal life, how many what they describe, how they describe themselves as recovering lawyers I know who are now in completely different professions. My son's Spanish
Mm.
teacher is a recovering lawyer. So so that's very true with like smaller law firms. With larger law firms where people are there and they're on partner track, when they burn out, they stick around. And then
Mm.
they try coping with that without leaving the organization. And it's extremely detrimental for the organization and the individual, with
Mm.
reckless behavior, with alcoholism, drug addiction, extramarital affairs, and then underperformance, not hitting hours, all sorts of things that come out
Sure.
of that. So with with uh, with quiet quitting, a lot of times it seems like there are people who can't leave. There's no easy option to leave, and as your
Right.
groceries start doubling in price or tripling in price, it creates this environment where it's really hard to leave suddenly. That job that
Sure.
a couple months ago people were leaving without anything else even lined up.
Thinking about it. Right. You're absolutely right. Yeah. That's a fantastic point. Yeah. And I think, I was just going to add to that too. I think that maybe some way to alleviate that is just maybe a flexibility in work schedules. I just think that could be a solution that companies offer. And I know that's something that we've talked about a lot over the last year or so, just with a limited PTO, right, or just being able to have those benefits that allow you to take a step back and evaluate and things. I think that's something that employees can or employers can do for their employees. Maybe even a suggestion is to like run a pilot around that and see if it makes sense to. I think maybe even Chick-fil-A. I think, and I maybe read an article like maybe a couple weeks ago about going to a 3-day work week,
Yeah.
and so like a 3 10-hour something like that. I just or 4-day work weeks that we've talked about and seen people adopt. That could, I think, help alleviate a lot of these HR problems that we have, is just having the ability to be flexible with your employees and just having solutions in place that allow them to do their best work, but then also allow them to avoid burnout, quiet quitting, and the looking for a way out, I guess, right?
Right, right. And I think the theme that I'm seeing come out of this conversation is this theme of collaboration and listening to your employees.
Mm-hmm.
And, change management 101 is that if you want to gain buy in, which you need in order for any change initiative to be successful, you've got to gain buy in by making the person part of the conversation and part of the solution. You have to
Mm-hmm.
include your people in developing the solution. I can't tell you how many change initiatives I have been a part of where we have received extreme pushback from people, even though objectively it was 100% like a positive for the individuals involved. But there was pushback
Mm.
because nobody wants to be changed. Nobody wants to be a pawn that you're saying, "Oh, I know what's best for you. I'm going to move you here or here." It's about it's about engaging them in the conversation and the solution building. And if you can be flexible enough to help them define flexibility, right? Is that flexibility of time, flexibility of
Right.
space, a little bit of both? Is it somebody who wants to work 3 days a week, if that means working 12-hour days those weeks? Is it somebody who would find that working 3 days a week would create more stress and they wouldn't be able to unplug,
Mm.
or they'd find it
Mm.
more stressful? I think it
Yeah.
all comes back to that theme.
That's such a great point, insightful point, because you're right. Flexibility means different things to different people, and you're right. It could add more stress to someone if they are only working a 3 day. I don't personally think that, and I would love something like that. But you're right. It just depends on the situation and the person and the individual, and this may not work for everyone, right? But again, that's just, and I think you're right, going back to the overarching theme of just collaboration and finding out whether through it's an employee survey or whether it's through um, just one-on-one meetings, just being able to get to know how your employees tick and what their interests are, what makes them, what fuels them, and just being able to hopefully provide solutions that allow them to stick around for a long time and do their best work. I think that's just critical. It's just, instead of having to worry about, as managers, is someone going to leave, or is someone looking, or is there might be sliding in their work on this area. Just again, being in the trenches with them is just massively critical, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So, all right, I think we have time for like one last theme that we're seeing. Selfishly, I'd love to
Yeah,
discuss training and development that you had brought up off camera. What kind of
yeah.
trends are you seeing around this learning and development, training and development um, uh, sort of need from employees?
That's a great question. I think that from a solution perspective, I know at TruPay we offer a learning management system that allows companies to create an environment where they can have trainings and classes and over different topics, and do that right from their employee self-service module. They're allowed to do and grow and learn, and be able to just take different classes as they need to. But I think the training piece is huge. I think that a lot of organizations um, miss the boat in this way. I think they may have the training classes out there, and then are they following through on those? Are they getting their employees engaged in that training process and development? I think employees want to grow. I think they want to be developed, and they want to continue to move on in their career at their organization. So I think an organization that has those trainings in place, the development in place, that also follows through on making sure that those employees are engaged in that entire process, learning from it, and being able to put that into their day-to-day work. I think it's just absolutely huge. I think it's a big area that a a lot of people or a lot of HR directors are really developing and adding as part of their arsenal is just the constant learning and development and employee growth as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, I think it's often seen as sort of like a necessary tool, but I don't think
Mhm.
it's been recognized for what it also is in terms of this motivational piece for employees. That over the pandemic, people were feeling so extremely stagnant, and when we feel
Mhm.
burned out, it's like we want to take put less on someone's plate because we think of overload as the core of
Mhm.
burnout, but it's not actually. It's only one element of it. It really depends on what's being put on my plate, whether that's going to burn me
Mhm.
out or not. But this lack of growth is what caused so many people to resign. In some of the prominent studies regarding the Great Resignation, lack of training and development or lack of development opportunities was up there as the number one reason people left their job during the Great Resignation, tied with pay.
Mhm.
So, um, offering these opportunities is a way to keep your people growing. They therefore do a better job for you. You're building your
Right.
bullpen toward management and other roles,
Mhm.
and you're engaging them, right? It's like it's a
Mhm.
win win win. But too
Right.
often, um, it's the first thing that we cut when we're feeling the squeeze financially, or when we
Right.
don't have enough people on hand. And so it's super important to find ways to continuously incorporate that into your budget and into your schedule without overloading the budget or the schedule. So,
Oh,
little
sure.
plug, if you want help with that, call me or Brian. We'll work something out. But
Right.
really this is so essential.
Oh, I think it's huge. And a real life example of that is from a sales perspective. We you know personal branding is a big topic we're all hearing about. I think we talked a little bit about this off air as far as having to try and build that part of your business of your sales process and just having your own personal brand. And I think that that's huge. And part of what our sales team has gone through is a personal sales um, or personal branding course where they're able to kind of develop their own personal brand and whether it be a podcast or whether it be writing or whether it be different things that they can do to be able to out get them to get their name out there, right? And I think that's something you can add to. Just an example, we added it to our, didn't cost a whole lot, but I think it's given our team a sense of just a new way to be able to do their day-to-day work, and they had fun with it. They've been able to do some things that are really unique and different, and I think that's something that we can but to your point, like it doesn't have to be personal branding, it can be whatever, but just having that as an option is
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah. And I know some people would say, whoa, whoa, whoa. We don't send Brian out to train on, personal, professional development, professional
Mm-hmm.
branding. Otherwise, he's going to do things like the water cooler and be picked up by one of the viewers, and they're going to want to hire him away from us, right? But if you're not
Right.
growing people, to the extent that you're scared that they are becoming a hotter and hotter commodity that somebody's going to steal away from you, then you're doing it wrong. Keep doing it. Keep
Right.
developing those people, and more people will seek out employment with you. And those people who were able to grow immensely and go work for, even if it's your competitor, those people are going to be thinking positively about your organization, and they're going to be
Yes.
that reach that you have, this referral market, and there's just so much upside to having excellent people graduate from your organization, right?
Oh,
And be
sure.
alumni of your organization, that only have good things to say.
Right. Oh, absolutely. That's very well said, and I think it's again absolutely critical. But it allows us as managers, though, to that's what we should be doing. We should be growing our employees, and we should be helping them succeed in all areas. And you're dead on. Absolutely.
Well, Brian, this has been amazing. I'm sorry that my voice is like horrible. It wasn't that bad until I turned on the cameras and then things
So
started
we
going.
went live, right? Yeah.
Always. So,
Yeah.
so Bryan, I know after this conversation, people are going to want to be in touch with you. So if they turn on their camera and on their phone and just hover right over that QR code right above your head, that will take them directly to um, TruPay. So you can learn more about the TruPay organization, and more about what Bryan and his team do. If somebody wants to get in touch with you directly, to tune into
Yeah.
your podcast, what's the title of your podcast again?
Well, I have a couple. We do one here at TruPay called Inspired Insights. Myself and Jeff McEwen, and we co-host that and release one every other Thursday. So we are in season 3 on that podcast. That's the one that's active right now. I did start one during the pandemic called Essential HR. And you've been on both shows, David. I think you're probably the only one that's been on both shows. But that is one that is still out there and active as well. If you want to learn more about us and what we do, two great podcasts to check out.
Very cool. Definitely do that. Connect with Bryan on
LinkedIn,
LinkedIn.
yeah, LinkedIn as well. Big on LinkedIn, Twitter as well, but LinkedIn's primarily the one that I do the most
Yeah, check out his social
activity on.
media and tell him how his personal branding's going. That's
Yeah,
so.
absolutely.
I want to thank you, Bryan, for being on the water cooler. It's been a long time coming, and I'm so happy that I could have you on. Your years within HR, and I'm not calling you old, except your oldest daughter just got married, didn't she? So that's
She
that's
did. She did.
crossing over into a new stage in life. That's
A new stage of life for
yeah,
sure.
you're officially old now. But you're being so tenured within the HR world really brings so much wisdom and knowledge that you were able to share with us today. And I think that's incredibly valuable. And I hope that people learned a lot. Thank you all for viewing. If you weren't catching us live, but you're catching the replay, please comment, ask questions. We'll be monitoring those over the next couple weeks. And in 2 weeks, I hope that you can join me as we are joined by Rita Ernst. This is the day before Thanksgiving. So I thought Rita Ernst, the positivity influencer, would be the best guest to have the day before Thanksgiving to discuss gratitude and positivity in a disrupted world. So I hope that you can catch us then. That's 2 weeks from now, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Bryan. See you next time.